So in case you missed it, this happened, and I have some thoughts. So in case you're wondering, no, I'm not going back on the things I talked about in this video, but I'm still interested in the technology. I still want people who use this platform to have a good experience. My son actually still has his, because even though I have sort of sworn off Nintendo, I'm not going to take my kids' stuff. I'm not going to tell the grandparents that they can't buy the kids a Nintendo Switch so that he can play Mario or something. So I still have some thoughts and some notes that I've taken here. This is not everything. If you want to know everything that was talked about and revealed in the Direct, go watch the Direct. They also have a website here where they go over all of the juicy little details of everything to do with the new Nintendo Switch 2, including they've got some tech specs. The tech specs don't really reveal a whole lot. Custom processor made by NVIDIA. They don't tell you how much RAM it's got or anything of that nature. But anyway, let's go over the notes that I took on things that I might care about, and then we'll go from there. Number one, for compatible games, you can game share a single copy of a game from a Nintendo Switch 2 to up to 3 other systems at the same time for local multiplayer and things of that nature. I could be wrong, but the way it was sort of presented in the video is that it sort of looks like the feature Steam has had it for a long time on PC, where you can play a game that has local multiplayer only, and essentially share a stream of your game screen, of your display, through Steam to some other person and allow them to interact as like player 2, right? So if you wanted to play a Monopoly game and that Monopoly game didn't have online multiplayer, or the person didn't own the game, you could sort of share your screen, and Steam would like interpret inputs from that person as a player 2, and you can play a local only multiplayer game across the internet to other devices. That's sort of what it sounds like, because in the video they were showcasing a sort of board game type thing that's going to release with the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's going to be the first title that supports this, they said. And also because of the fact that you can do it to regular Nintendo Switch 1 consoles for the games that support it, it sort of seems like you're going to have one primary Nintendo Switch 2 that's going to be like the host device, and it's the thing that's actually running the game. And then it's going to stream a video feed to the other 3 devices for other people that are going to be playing, players 2, 3, and 4. And basically interacting with a video stream, more or less. So I could be wrong. Read this website, watch the Direct, see if you come away from it with a different conclusion, but that's sort of what it looked and sounded like to me. Number 2, 7.9-inch screen. That is bigger than the original. The original was like 6.2. I don't remember how big the screen on the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally is, but that is definitely a big jump, a big improvement. It's 1080p, 120 Hz, and HDR. It is an LCD, which is going to hurt battery life somewhat, because with an OLED, even though it'd be a little bit more expensive, the OLED can just turn pixels off when they go to black. And so the Nintendo Switch OLED, the Steam Deck OLED, things of that nature, their battery life is going to be a little bit better than it would have been otherwise. So this LCD screen is going to hurt it. I kind of wonder about 1080p in handheld mode. And because I'll be completely honest, I've got a Steam Deck OLED with a screen that's close to that size. I don't remember how big the Steam Deck OLED screen is, but it's somewhere in that ballpark, and it's 800p. It's totally fine. Maybe it's because I'm pushing 40, but I've got 20/20 vision. And like, if I put it up right to my eyeball, like, yeah, I can see individual pixels, but do I care when I'm playing a game? No, it looks fine. So I kind of wonder why they would choose 1080p for the built-in screen, because even if the Switch 2 can run the games at 1080p, if you're handheld and you're running on battery, asking the games to run at 1080p is going to hurt your battery life. And even if the games aren't running at 1080p, it's still going to be pushing those pixels out and just scaling the image up. So even if it's running the game at 720p, it still is going to be scaling it up to a 1080p. And so maybe that's just the screens that were easily and cheaply available to them. I mean, it's fine. It's gonna give you a sharper image. Like, the games can run at 1080p in handheld. I just don't think most people are gonna notice or care in handheld mode. 2 USB-C ports, so they've got one on the top and one on the bottom. So the one on the bottom is obviously primarily going to be used when you dock it. That's going to be what plugs into the bottom to charge and to send your video out to your television or whatever. The top one is basically could be used to charge it while you're in tabletop mode. You could plug in a USB-C camera, which they also talk about somewhere here. Yeah, they've got a little camera that's going to ship with it. Or not ship with it, you can buy it separately for, I think it's $50 or something. But it also says USB camera support. Plug in a compatible USB-C camera. So maybe it won't just be this camera that works with it. But anyway, it has 2 USB-C ports on the console itself for charging and peripherals, whether top or bottom, whichever is more convenient for you in that particular situation. So that's cool. 256 gigabytes of internal storage. It says it's faster. I think it's still UFS storage. Let me find here. UFS. So it's not an NVMe solid state drive. Just regular UFS flash storage, just like the old one. Probably like a newer revision of the technology and probably faster, but it is just regular flash storage. It's not like an NVMe drive or anything like that. So that's a pretty decent like built-in storage amount. That's a heck of a lot better than the 32 gigabytes that the Nintendo Switch came with. And I think the OLED, when I had one, it came with 64 gigabytes. It's a heck of a lot better than either one of those. But that said, the games are going to be newer, better. They're going to have higher resolution textures, so they're going to take up more space. So you'll probably chew through this pretty quick. They did say that it's still going to use micro SD cards, but if you want to use the micro SD card for game storage, it has to be micro SD Express. So the regular micro SD card that you've got in your original Switch or in your Steam Deck or something, it will function in it. I think you can like save photos and screen captures and stuff to it, but supposedly it won't let you store games on there because they don't want to tell you that you can use something and then you have a negative experience from it. And I can get that. When I'm installing games to the micro SD card in my Steam Deck, it's noticeably slower than using the built-in solid state drive. When I'm using the built-in solid state drive, it runs as fast as the internet goes. But when I'm using the micro SD card, it'll run 80 to 100 megabytes per second for a little while, and then eventually you can watch the downloads will pause while the micro SD card catches up on storing the files that have been downloaded, and it usually settles in at about 30 megabytes per second, which is not amazing. So I can see where this upgrade to micro SD Express is a desirable feature if they can get it in there without jacking the price up too high. The dock can output 4K HDR. So not only is the built-in display HDR, but the dock itself can output HDR if your external display supports it. The dock now has its own built-in fan for some active cooling while the console is docked. So when you're docking it, say the battery is charging, the battery is going to generate a little bit of heat. Let's say you're playing a game while the battery is charging, so the CPU and GPU die are going to get a little bit hot. You crank up the resolution because you're docked. That's going to make it work a little bit harder. And so they have stuck a fan in the dock to actively cool the console when it's docked, so I can probably push those clock speeds higher and get better performance when it's docked. The new Pro Controller has some extra buttons on the back. They are basically those on this Xbox controller. They call them GL and GR, and they said they are remappable paddle buttons. So if you're playing Splatoon or a first-person shooter of some sort and you want to be able to like jump and turn and shoot all at the same time, you don't have to like try to like press A and then really rapidly throw your thumb over to the joystick and spin. You could just like remap A to one of those back paddles, and that way you can have your thumb on the joystick, one of your fingers on the now remapped A button on the back, and your index finger on the trigger, so you can jump, spin, and shoot all at the same time. They said it is backwards compatible. I was skeptical, but there has been no mention of any sort of financial cost associated with playing your original Nintendo Switch games on the Switch 2, so I could have been dead wrong about that. It seems like I was. I was sure that they would find a way to monetize that somehow, to be like, oh, if you want to play your Switch games on the Switch 2, you need to pay, a certain amount of money to upgrade. And they have worked something like that in, but it doesn't have to do necessarily with the backwards compatibility. Some games are going to have a Nintendo Switch 2 edition that you can purchase as part of an upgrade pack, so it does cost extra. And if the game supports it and you purchase this upgrade pack, you can take your original Nintendo Switch game and it will upgrade it to have higher resolutions, higher frame rates. Some games have whole new game modes added to them. Like Mario Party Jamboree has like entirely new game modes if you pay for the upgrade pack and play it on Nintendo Switch 2. So that's cool. Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are getting, if you buy the upgrade pack, are getting stuff built into the Nintendo Switch app that will like help you find shrines and Koroks that you've missed. I'm not sure how I feel about your phone sitting there, go north. Like, I spent way too many hours finding hundreds and hundreds of Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild. I'm not sure. I don't know. But it's a thing you can do. That if you pay for the upgrade pack for those games and you play them on Nintendo Switch 2, that's some of the stuff that you're going to see. And I could tell from the footage that they were showing in the Direct that Breath of the Wild was running. I don't know that it was 60 frames per second because it was a YouTube video and I was on the big screen, but it was definitely higher than 30 frames per second. So you're getting higher resolution and higher frame rates for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on Nintendo Switch 2. Oh, and you can create cool stuff in Tears of the Kingdom, and then you can use a QR code to send your creations to a friend who can then import that creation into their game. Metroid Prime 4 seems like it's going to be a cross-generation game, and if you play it on Nintendo Switch 2, you're going to have visual modes that you can select from. They said that if you pick quality, it's going to run at 4K, 60 frames per second with HDR support. The HDR, I think, is honestly a bigger improvement than the 4K, especially because, and I could be wrong, but I'm sort of doubting that the Switch 2 is going to run a lot of these games at native 4K. Now, Metroid Prime may. The Metroid Prime games seem in the past to have been really well optimized, and they may pull it off, especially with like simpler environments and stuff. But based on a lot of the patents that we know that they filed in the run-up to the announcement of the Nintendo Switch 2 and the fact that they're using more modern NVIDIA hardware, I'm guessing that this 4K is probably going to be like 1080p or 1440p, and then using DLSS to sort of super sample it up to 4K, so you still get those sharp edges and stuff. And it's definitely going to look better, but it's not really native 4K. But anyway, and your performance mode is going to run at 1080p, 120 frames per second, also with HDR. This right here would probably be my preferred way to play, because if I'm sitting 10 feet away from a television screen playing with a controller, honestly, I'm not going to know the difference between 4K and 1080p. Like, you can tell, but I think I'd rather have the 120 frames per second than the slight improvement in sharpness by going to 4K, especially since I don't really think the 4K is going to be like truly native. But anyway, those are your options for Metroid Prime 4 if you play on the Nintendo Switch 2. Hogwarts Legacy is getting a Nintendo Switch 2 sort of upgraded re-release. They didn't mention an upgrade pack like the other games, so it doesn't seem like you're just going to get away with buying the upgrade pack for a couple of dollars and then upgrading your existing purchase of the game. It could work that way, but the way they presented it, it seemed like it was going to be a whole new re-release of the game at full price for Nintendo Switch 2. And I think they'll probably get quite a few games that do this, especially the more popular games that sold a lot on other platforms, because Hogwarts Legacy is one of those many games that technically it had a Nintendo Switch release, but it probably shouldn't have, because it looked and ran horrible. Like, the Nintendo Switch version had completely different or missing assets in a lot of places. They would wall up windows to prevent the game from having to render stuff outside that window that it just couldn't handle. The lighting was a lot worse. Clothing on people, instead of being animated and sort of free moving separate objects from the characters, were sort of painted on as part of the model, so it just didn't it had less to work with. There was loading screens on the Nintendo Switch version that didn't exist in those spots on the other platform. It was just, technically, if that's the only thing you had to play the game on, I guess it's better than nothing. But anyway, the one that I heard about that caught my attention that I care about is Hogwarts Legacy, is getting a Nintendo Switch 2 upgraded re-release. So if you haven't played it, or if you are a Nintendo gamer and you just want a better version of the game, that's coming with it. Hitman isn't really my thing, but I wrote this down because the same developers that are bringing Hitman to the Nintendo Switch also mentioned a thing called Project 007, but there was no details. It just sort of showed like the gun barrel and played sort of the little theme song in the background, and it just said Project 007, and that was it. So I'm guessing there's going to be more details about that coming at a later date. Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. This is sort of, if you haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, I'll try not to spoil too much, but basically at the beginning of the game, Princess Zelda gets sucked into the past. And this game is set there. You're playing as Princess Zelda and other characters during the imprisoning war in the period of time that she got taken back to at the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom. So it's not really a prequel to Tears of the Kingdom. It's sort of an alternative, like side-by-side story, like alternative perspective. Instead of playing as Link in modern Hyrule, you're playing as Zelda in the time she got taken back to. So that looked pretty cool. And it'll be interesting to see how many characters and how much stuff they can get going on the new, much more powerful hardware. GameCube is being added to the Nintendo Classics, so if you have some old GameCube games that you want to play, they showcased Wind Waker, which is odd because they have a Wind Waker HD that was released on the Wii U, and the Switch has gotten several other Wii U titles, so why they never ported the better Wii U version of the game, I'm not sure, but you can play the GameCube version officially from Nintendo Classics. Obviously it requires the Nintendo Switch Online subscription. So you can see here, as reported from IGN, that they mentioned F-Zero GX, Wind Waker, and a few others, and I'm assuming they're going to do like the other platforms that are on there and like slowly bring more games into the library as time progresses. They also announced along with it a wireless Nintendo GameCube controller, much like the Nintendo 64 one that you could buy for the original Nintendo Switch. They now have a GameCube version of it that's going to come out with it. Final Fantasy VII Intergrade is going to drop, and that's awesome because that's a great game. I played through it mostly on Steam Deck. I've also played through it on a little bit on my desktop PC here, and even as much as they had to lower settings and stuff to get it running on the Steam Deck, it was still an awesome game. It was a great game, so that's great that they're getting that. From Software, the folks behind Dark Souls, are releasing a Switch 2 exclusive game called Dusk Bloods. Console launches June the 5th of this year. They will have two SKUs they mentioned. A base console, that's just the console, so if you're not really interested in Mario Kart and you plan on buying some games digitally, maybe that one is a little bit cheaper up front. That's $400. Oh, no, $450. And then they'll also have another SKU that comes with Mario Kart World at $499, so $500. Mario Kart World by itself is going to cost $80, so that seems like that's going to be their new standard for the cost of their first-party games. And so technically, you're getting, if you're going to play Mario Kart World anyway, you're getting a $30 discount if you buy the console bundle that ships with it. Because otherwise you're going to be out $450 for a bare console and then $80 for Mario Kart World whenever you pick that up. And speaking of Mario Kart World, it's an open world Mario Kart. All of the tracks are distinct tracks that you can go race on. But the way they presented it was that you could like leave the track at any time during a race and just go check stuff out, or you could also go into like an open world sort of free roam mode, including via multiplayer, and just like drive around. So there's probably going to be like quests and hidden areas and things. That seemed pretty cool because as an old fart, I remember playing Super Mario Kart 64, or Mario Kart, I don't think it was Super, but Mario Kart 64. And I remember on Royal Raceway when we discovered that you could actually like leave the track and go over to where Peach's castle was. My brother and cousins and I spent hours convinced that there was some secret hidden something over around Peach's castle. Like, why would they put this whole area here? Why would they flesh this out and build the castle if there wasn't something here to find? And, you know, we would waste hours and never finish a Mario Kart race because we were trying to like wedge the cart in between the polygons that made up the hillside to see if we could like bounce ourselves up and over the hillside and see if there was something behind the castle or something. So having a Mario Kart game that is actually open world and is intended to be explored outside of the racing seems pretty cool. But what are my thoughts? I think it's really cool. I think that they've done a great job. I question the 1080p in handheld, especially considering, I think they said, let me look at the tech specs. Do they have the battery life listed here on the tech specs? Battery life, yeah, 2 to 6.5 hours. With an ARM processor, 2 hours, man, that seems, you can tell there's something there that's going to eat that battery life. I'm going to guess it's this LCD screen. It's the fact that it's 1080p even in handheld mode. And if you crank up the frame rate to 120 hertz, you're going to hurt your battery life. I'm hoping that maybe they will have a little toggle, like sort of like what the Steam Deck has. So if you're playing on Steam Deck and you're not really playing something where frame rate is that important and you want to extend your battery life, you can press the little quick access button, and there's all sorts of settings in there to like manually sort of downclock the APU in it. You can manually set like the display refresh rate, so you can cut the refresh rate down from 60 to like 40 hertz or even 30 hertz to sort of save battery life and extend the battery life. I'm assuming most games are not gonna be limited to 2 hours, but the fact that they're already admitting that you may get as little as 2 hours out of it, I'm going to assume there's going to be some revisions coming down the pipe later. But overall, I think it's an awesome upgrade for the people in the Nintendo ecosystem. I'm glad they're finally getting HDR. I'm glad they're finally getting greater than 60 hertz refresh rates. I'm glad they're getting Final Fantasy VII, a decent version of Hogwarts Legacy, a decent amount of internal storage, even if it is slower flash storage. Like, I really think that it's going to be an awesome console. And I'm hoping, I'm not even going to buy one because of, you know, what I talked about before, but I'm hoping that it's more powerful than the Steam Deck because it'll push handheld technology that much harder. Valve may feel motivated to show what they've been working on and respond in kind with like a Steam Deck 2 or something. But now that I've sort of bragged on how good it is and how cool it sounds, even if I wasn't sort of morally opposed to the way Nintendo has treated some of its biggest fans, here's the big reason I wouldn't buy one. Outside of the Nintendo exclusive games, there is nothing on this list that I can't do elsewhere. They made a big thing about you can use the Joy-Cons as mouse input for games like Metroid Prime 4, and they had some little game that's like wheelchair basketball where you used both of them as a mouse to like roll the wheelchair and stuff. There's a mouse on my PC. That one's wired. The Steam Deck has 2 trackpads that can be used as mouse input and a touchscreen and gyro. This is the OLED Steam Deck, so it also has HDR. It doesn't go to 120 Hz, but it goes to 90, so greater than 60 Hz refresh rate. HDR, OLED, gyro, touchscreen, little trackpads, and if I want to plug in a dock here, I can dock it and use a keyboard and mouse with it if I want to. You can get a base model Steam Deck LCD with 256 gigabytes of storage for less than you can get a Nintendo Switch 2 for. GameCube emulation, totally fine on the Steam Deck. And as you've probably seen on YouTube by now, Nintendo Switch emulation is mostly fine on the Steam Deck with a couple of titles that you just can't play on it, like Breath of the Wild. Doesn't run the greatest on the Steam Deck, but most titles, while emulating a foreign architecture, run fine on the Steam Deck. Online play is free through Steam and other platforms. System level voice and video chat through Discord, through Steam itself, built into the Steam interface. That's all free. Nintendo's going to charge for the new chat function. They said that it's going to be free at first for a limited time, they said, to get as many people on board as possible, and then they're going to make a Nintendo Switch Online subscription a requirement. That's all free on the Steam Deck. So, while I think it's awesome that Nintendo is advancing and they're finally getting decent experience out of their console. People that use their consoles are getting more powerful hardware, so they're going to get better looking and running games. A lot of these new features that Nintendo is just now adding, I've had for years and years on PC. The Xbox 360 with 512 megabytes of shared RAM between the GPU and CPU had system-level voice chat parties. Why in the world did the Nintendo Switch not have it? Why in the world did you have to sit there, and if the game didn't have built-in voice chat, you had to have your phone sitting beside you on the couch, which meant you couldn't use headphones, right? So like if you wanted to use something like this Corsair headset of mine, it's wireless, so that you could hear the game and your voice chat through a wireless headset. You couldn't do that because A, the Nintendo Switch won't work with these USB dongled headsets, at least the last time I tried it when I had one. So if you wanted to use outside the game voice chat on your Nintendo Switch, either just by calling somebody up on the phone or with the Nintendo Switch app, you had to have your phone sitting on the couch beside you and talk to your phone and play your game, and so you couldn't use headsets. Why was they're finally catching up, and it's awesome. But there is nothing here outside of Metroid Prime 4, really, that really made me go, oh, that would be worth spending $500 on a new console for. And I'm not going to anyway, but like, none of the features that they mentioned of the new console are features that are new to people outside of the Nintendo sphere of influence. So it's cool that they've got them, but it's about stinking time. So that's my thoughts. It's an awesome upgrade. People in that ecosystem are going to love it. They're going to have a better experience because of the changes and upgrades that they've made to it. As somebody who has a considerable Steam library and isn't really tied into this ecosystem, and as somebody who's expressed my displeasure with some of Nintendo's actions outside of their gaming platform, there's nothing here that, is cool, awesome, but I'm probably going to skip this one. I may pick up a used one in a couple of years to play through Metroid Prime 4, but that's probably about it. We'll see how it shakes out. But what do you guys think? Are you going to go buy one? Are any of these features that I went over something that's really compelling to you and makes you want to go out and buy one? But that's it. I just wanted to take a few minutes to give my take on it. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. And if you guys buy one, I hope you have tons of fun with it. And I'm really glad that Nintendo is improving the experience for you guys. So y'all take care. Have a good one. Enjoy your new kit when it comes out. And this is Marcus out. Y'all have a good one.